I married a guy I knew most of my life. We knew each other in high school and even went to prom together. But little did I know, I did not know him at all. I will call my now ex-husband Dirty Chad.
Hey y'all, this is April.
And this is Caroline.
With Bloody Happy Hour.
And we are bringing to you Dirty Chad. Get it on patreon.com/bloodyhappyhour exclusively for all the details and all the red flags.
Caroline's finally telling her story.
My truth.
Welcome to Purpose-Driven Sobriety. Thank you for joining the Purpose-Driven Sobriety podcast. My name is Christine, and I'm an alcoholic. Today's show, I'm so proud. We've got some recovery T-shirts that are on purposedrivensobriety.com. Every single penny from the sale of these T-shirts, which is about $5 a piece, goes towards paying for the show. So we use that. But today, I'm going to get straight into it. I'm so excited to have my guest, Mr. Don Radon. And we've been in the same kind of circles for a minute, but never really got formally introduced until very recently when I came and visited you at your facility. I got to tell you, there are people in recovery. I like to think that I certainly talk the talk, but I would like to think I walk the walk, right, in recovery. But you, sir, do it all. And I'm just telling you that I'm in awe of your dedication and your love for recovery and your love for other men that are coming up behind you, because what you have is a men's facility that is just it. I think I've come to know you well enough that you'll be uncomfortable with this statement, but you're saving lives. You are allowing God to use you in such a way that you're saving lives, and there is no higher job than that. There is no higher. I'm just in awe of you, and so I thank you for coming here to talk to me. And on the show, we just talk about basically what we do in meetings. What it was like, what happened, and what we're like now, and what brought you to this place that you, like I said, that you have a facility, Recovered and Free, over in Hubbard. And so I'm just curious to hear kind of just your story and what led you to that place.
Oh my gosh, Christine, it's a few decades of story.
Yeah.
I went to my first meeting when I was 17. It was November 11th, 1987. And I was very much an atheist.
Really?
Absolutely. A drug addict and alcoholic, but you couldn't tell me that. I didn't think that I was one. I grew up in Canada. Drinking and hockey are, part of the national
expectations.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I went to this meeting of AA because there was no other 12-step fellowship around. And they're talking about, alcohol, which I was a little uncomfortable with. And then I looked at the steps on the wall, and it was God, God, God. And for an atheist, I just shut right down. Even the higher power thing, I knew what they were alluding to.
Right.
And so an old timer once told me, if God drives you out of the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, then alcohol will drive you back in.
Ooh, that's big.
And that's exactly my experience. I bounced in and out for another 22 years. And in those 22 years, I was able to put together 364 days once because I had to celebrate that year.
Wow.
And I had 5.5 years once. And that was after the 5.5 years, I couldn't really put any time together. I had gotten married and I'd moved to the States in 94. I've lived in 47 U.S. cities since.
Wow.
Since 94, trying to run for myself. And always found me there.
I was going to say, what's a saying in recovery? Wherever you go, there you are.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Oh. And I thought it was everybody else. I changed my identity, changed everything about me, my career, and I would find alcohol, drugs. It would be like I had this one job in Atlanta, Georgia, where I'm new start, new page. No one knows me. I'm a sales manager of a large sales team, and I go down on my first day. I go down for a cigarette. I don't smoke anymore, but I go down for a cigarette, and one of the employees is there. My first day, and this employee of mine on my team says, "Hey, Don, do you want to do a key bump?" And I thought, what do I have a sign on me that says I would love to do some cocaine right now?
Wow.
And it just finds us. And so I couldn't run from it, bounced in and out of meetings. And then in 2006, I actually met God on the end of a rope. 2006, we're now into my second marriage. Love this gal. She was a great woman, great Christian gal who loved God and didn't believe in divorce. My alcoholism and addiction drove her to violate her own spiritual principles. And when my daughter was taken from me, and she was really the only reason why I was holding it together. I wasn't really holding it together. I was using, and by this time it had progressed to methamphetamine, and it was, I will never forget the day that it happened, and watching the car drive off into the west, and it was about 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and the sunbeams were hitting her blonde hair above the car seat, and I knew they weren't coming back. And
how old was she?
She was
at
3.
that time? Oh, wow.
And so I went back into the house, and now the house is filled with all the memories, the pictures of the wedding, and birthdays, and Emma's birth, and I'm thinking, okay, it's time to pull yourself out, time to go back to the meetings, get yourself a sponsor, get yourself 4 sponsors, do what you got to do, and I'm trying to cheerleader myself into recovery, and I'm feeling the momentum. Okay, I can do this. I had 5 years once, almost 6 years. I can do this. I can do it. And then this voice comes into my head and says, yeah, you can do it. You can get rebuild the empire. You can get her back. The in-laws will probably look at you like you're the devil for a few years, but you'll get it all back. And when you do, and all the trust is back and all the love is back, there's going to be that split second where no one's going to be looking, and you're going to do it again. And it hit me like a ton of bricks. That was my step 1 experience. Not in a meeting, not looking at a book. It was on that couch. I knew that I was going to do it again. And then I looked over and I saw that picture of my daughter, and I was like, the best thing I can do for this little girl is to check out and end it, because I don't want to raise her through the plexiglass, whether it's the psych ward or jail. I don't want to send her prison art for her birthday.
Right.
And and she was young enough that her mom could make up a story as to where Daddy went, And so I'm tying the rope off, and I'm crying. I'm sobbing, because it's the most painful thing that I know I have to sacrifice for my girl. Like, I'm doing this for her, not to her. And I climb up into the rafters, and I tie the rope off, and I'm blubbering by this point. And I shake my fist at the rafters and say, what have you got for me now? Expletive. And I go to step off the ledge, and I'm struck paralyzed. I literally fell over sideways, paralyzed, and I couldn't move. And I'm on this 2x6, and just a puff of air in the right direction, I'm falling over and dying. And I'm like, what is happening? And all I hear is this voice in my head that says, call Cliff Bishop. And I'm like, who is Cliff Bishop? What are you talking about? Just 4 more inches. Just move me. Let me go. Call Cliff Bishop over and over. And I said, okay, fine, I'll call Cliff Bishop. And it was like the blood started rushing to my extremities again. I took the rope off. I climbed down the stairs, and thank God that God didn't give me an anonymous name, Cliff B, because I picked up there's this thing, I don't know if the kids know about it today. It's called a phone book.
Oh, you're right.
And, yeah. And I opened it up to Dallas. And
Oh, you didn't know who Cliff...
I didn't know who Cliff
really?
Bishop was at all.
Oh, snap.
And so I look up Bishop, Clifford. There's only one. And I call this guy, and I'm supposed to call you, and I'm dying. And he said, meet me on Tuesday night at the Primary Purpose Group, and I'll sit down and talk with you. And I don't know how this guy did it when I met him. I wasn't too well at the time. I'd been up for 4 days. I had hair everywhere, and I had one eye looking for you and one eye looking after you. And he hugged me in such a way, like I could just like feel the love for an unlovely person. And he introduced himself as a recovered alcoholic. And I mean, I've been to thousands of meetings by this time. In 22 years, thousands of meetings, coast to coast, all across North America, Canada, everywhere. And I'd never heard recovered, never once. I'd heard people with 30 years of sobriety, Dave. My name is Dave, and I'm a gratefully recovering alcoholic, and I've been sober 33 years. And now Dave does not sound like the ray of hope.
Right.
That doesn't sound like
I want to be
gratitude.
just like
Yeah,
Dave.
oh, Dave, you mean I'm coming in this mess and I get to, for 33 years, end up
Right.
looking like you?
Right.
But he introduced himself as recovered, and I'd never heard it. I'd heard gratefully recovering. I'd heard sobriety dates, and I said, we never recover. We're always going to be sick. It's the party line. That's what I heard. And he says, you don't know crap about AA, do you? And he had me open up his big book to the title page. Now, I've had a second, third, and fourth edition of this book. Never opened it. And I read the title page, and it says the story of how many thousands of men and women have recovered from alcoholism. And I stood there. Now, if you go to 22 years of college, you're going to accidentally get a degree or
Right.
two. Accidentally.
Just by being in the way.
Yeah. And I went to 22 years of meetings, and I didn't know that we could get well. It's right on the title page, the ray of hope right on the title page. And I knew that this guy, I just knew that he knew what he was talking about.
That he was telling you the truth. Yeah.
And he took me through the work, and within 2 weeks, I had a spiritual experience. By the end of my second week, I had made 60 face-to-face amends, all of this contrary to what I'd learned in meetings. It's not a race. If you go into the woods 20 years, you can't get out in 2 weeks. And it's not true. If your God is God and all-powerful, he can take you up in a second.
Right.
And I'd made 66 face-to-face amends by the end of the second week. I'd been asked to be a sponsor on my second week. And I'm sponsoring a guy. I don't know what I'm doing. Cliff is leading me through how to lead someone through the steps. By the time I get my 30-day chip, my sponsee had been asked to be a sponsor. So I'm a grand sponsor by 30 days.
Wow. Which is how the program was originally written, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, we got to stop the bleeding, for God's sake.
Yeah, I mean, they were working with guys after their third day of sobriety. It was hit the road, like hit the pavement. There's lots of people dying, and this is what's gonna save you.
Right.
And the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous tells us real clear, like nothing will so much ensure immunity and unity from drinking as intensive work. And so I caught
with
on
another
fire
alcohol.
with another alcohol.
Absolutely.
Right, not workaholism. And I jumped right into it because I was a man with a mission. Like God, I'd suffered for 22 years, and I know this may offend some of your listeners, but I believe that the rooms, well-intentioned, cost me 2 marriages, my firstborn daughter, my 15-year career, my houses, my cars, because I listened to just don't drink and go to meetings.
Which is killing
Share your
people.
feelings. A problem shared is a problem halved. We'll love you so you can love yourself. All great things, but no staying power. The only way that I could stay sober was hiding out in meetings, which isn't life. That's not life.
Right.
And here's this man who took me through this work, and I'm having this spiritual experience, and I know that God is real, and he's moving in my life, and I just caught on fire. I had 11 12-step commitments a week that I was in Denton County Jail. I'd do 6 hours there, and I'd go to 6 different pods, and I'd bring a big book study to 5 men's pods and 1 woman's pod.
Wow.
And then I carried the message into treatment centers and detoxes and sober livings, and I was just on fire. Now, my sponsor did warn me to pump the brakes.
Get burned
Pump
out
the
real quick,
brakes.
yeah.
And I didn't listen to
Well,
him.
when you're that on fire, I get it, dude. It's like, I got to share this with somebody.
Yeah.
I mean, because,
I mean, I wanted to scream from the rooftops. There really is a solution, and it's not
And
going
it's the
to meetings.
truth, right.
It's not. You don't get free by the meetings you make. You get free by the steps
The
you
work
take.
you do, that's
you
right.
know, and it doesn't. God's arm is not so short that it takes 5 years to write a 4-step. That it takes. You're not working the 3rd step. It's a decision. You know, these are the first 3 decisions. One's a conclusion of the mind, and the other 2 are, just 2 conclusions of the mind and a decision. And then we get going right in inventory. And so I caught fire, and I didn't listen. And I started to get sour because I'd go to my home group of 120 people who would gladly stand up when it's time to, if there's anybody who has the time and willingness to sponsor, please stand up.
Right.
And then 120 people would stand up. And then I'd look at the board, the 12-step commitment board, and you'd see Don R, and not 120 other names. And so I started getting sour. And I wasn't 10-stepping it because I knew exactly what Cliff would say. Have you woke up today? Yes. Did you have to have a drink? No. Then go put a smile on his face.
Right.
And so that resentment started to build, and I got separated from God and did what we do.
What was that like that day? Were you? Tell me about that.
The relapse?
Yeah, I'm just curious. I mean, because 11 and a half years. Because what is your sobriety date? Your official sobriety?
This time is 5/10/17.
Okay, I mean, you hear people that have relapsed, and they're like, I just don't know what happened. And I understand. Make no mistake about it. I get that because. There would be times where it's like, I meant it. I'm not going to do that again. And then here I am. And it's like, shit. Now, of course, hindsight being 20/20, I can look back and go, dumbass, you weren't doing this.
Right.
But what was that like? I mean, were you shocked when it happened, or did you have?
No, it's this. The way I describe it is this analogy of, apparently, I haven't tried this, but apparently you can take a frog and put it in room temperature water, and if you slowly, ever so slowly, crank up the heat, the frog won't jump out. And you can actually boil the frog to death because it's cold-blooded. Its blood will rise to the ambient temperature.
Right.
And you can kill that frog. Now, if you went from cold water to hot,
right, it would jump out.
It would jump out. But that was the fade to black from being separated from God. I stopped doing one thing, and it didn't kill me, and it didn't. So it was, okay.
I didn't need that anyway. Then.
Prayer and meditation. Hey God, how you doing? Bless my day. Bye. And then the prayer got shorter, and the meditations got shorter, and then they fell off, and 10 steps started to fade, and I wasn't checking in with a response, and found reasons not to go carry the message anymore. I'm busy. And just ever so slowly, I faded to black. And it wasn't this big decision. It wasn't this big dramatic explosion. There was nothing really going on.
No big trauma that happened that you could go,
that's feet, was in love with this wonderful woman, and I just drank. And then I mean, it was worse than ever. I'd get a case of whiskey and go through half gallon a day.
Well, because a lot of people, right? Because we do have a lot of I call them earthlings, normal people that listen to the show. People think that when we get into recovery, right, that when we relapse, it'll take quite a while to get back to the danger zone, if you will, which is not true.
Not true at all.
Not true.
Well, medically speaking, I'm not a doctor, even though my initials are DR.
There you go.
apparently the uptake receptors, when we flood our brain with all these endorphins constantly by drinking and using drugs, and it heightens the euphoria. Our brain isn't supposed to stay in that state. So it creates these more uptake receptors to handle the flood. Well, more uptake receptors mean I got to do more to get that same euphoric feeling. And that's how the progression of the illness happens. Well, when we stop, I don't know how or when, but at some point when my levels start to get to normalcy, these extra uptake receptors begin to go dormant. They don't die, they go into dormancy. So I can begin to experience pleasure normally and, hear a baby laugh and it actually make me feel good instead of, annoyed.
Sure.
And when we drink or use again, we flood the synapse with
And they
the
are
endorphins.
awakened.
It wakens those uptake receptors up, and for me to get to where I need to go, I need to drink a lot more or use a lot more. And it wasn't a long relapse. I think maybe 3 months. She left, rightly so, lost the job, wrecked the car, just
All the things.
all the things. And it's not the things, it's not the consequences that define step one. It's that I can't control the amount that I take when I start. And when I'm not drinking or using, I have this obsession that someday I'm going to be able to do it successfully. If I just do
Like
it this
normal
way,
people,
yeah,
right.
I'm just going to do pills. Pills were never my thing. I liked go fast and alcohol.
Right.
And suddenly I'm addicted to Oxycontin. Because I'm thinking that if I just change the drug up, I'll be able to use and drink, still take the edge off of life and still
Right.
function. And I play the game and I substitute one for another. And I've been addicted to every drug that was available. There's a lot of stuff out now, synthetic stuff. Fentanyl wasn't a thing.
Right.
And because pharmaceutical test pilot, I kept trying to find out
Find the
what
thing, right.
what is the magical combination. Because for us, just without a solution, without God in our life, without that spiritual experience that changes the game, I'm like a fish out of water.
Right.
Water is drinking and using. I can breathe, I can function, and the rest of the world, my family, well-intentioned, wants me to stop. Just don't do it anymore.
Right.
And if I do that, I become a fish out of water, and I have to hold my breath.
Literally can't breathe.
Right.
Yeah.
And I have to hold my breath and hold my breath. And, that one day at a time was a lifesaver for somebody who's trying to hold their breath.
Sure.
Now, that's not a solution.
Right. Oh,
It just gets me through one more day of not breathing.
it's torture.
And then that day, fateful day comes where I just can't handle it anymore, and I take one sip or one line or one hit off a joint, and I breathe. And I keep breathing.
That sense of ease and comfort returns.
Yeah.
And you feel
I
normal.
can be alive again. But my living destroys relationships. My living
It kills
destroys
everything else, right? Everything else you love.
Yes. And that's why we become such good liars, because we can't stop doing it on our own. And the family functions, the family dynamics and relationships and work, societal, there's laws against us being loaded all the time and driving,
Right.
walking around even.
Yeah. The nerve.
And so I end up having to lie because I can't stop doing it. Where you been? Oh, I had to work late. Oh, I'm
Right.
just tired. Oh, I won't be home tonight. X, Y, and Z. Heck, I would lie to my second wife and tell her that I was going to my sponsor's house and he was going through a difficult time, so I'm probably going to just spend some time with him. And I was at the dope man's house. But regardless, at some point, being in the water is just too much, because I can't stand not having love in my life. I can't stand being so lonely, even surrounded by friends.
Right.
I mean, even in meetings, I felt alone, because the meeting makers make it. People were different than me, because I made meetings and got loaded. Well, get active and clean ashtrays. This is when you could smoke in meetings. Clean ashtrays, mop floors. I did all that and got loaded. Get active in the group. I was a treasurer. Got loaded.
Right.
Greeter at the door, got loaded. And all of this stuff didn't have a life-changing effect. It just allowed me to breathe or not breathe, hold my breath out of water. So when I met Cliff Bishop, like, he taught me how to get connected to the one power that can make me breathe underwater or above water as
Right.
as a fish,
Sure.
right? Make me breathe in space. You know, like God can do the miraculous with someone who's seeking. You know, God comes. The book says God comes to all who seek Him,
Right.
earnestly seek Him.
Right.
And He hasn't failed me once. I've failed Him plenty. I still do.
Earnestly seeking. You mentioned that. I heard something. What is it? Scott L. If you've ever listened to him teach a big book, it's absolutely amazing. But he said, and I loved this. He said he mentioned that line in the book where those who earnestly seek him, and he said, and guess where he hides? He hides at the same place a mother of a 3-year-old playing hide and seek with their child hides. It's right in plain sight, right? And oh man, that just hit me to my core.
Yeah, I heard this one thing that's similar to that. And God was talking to one of the angels, and he said, I don't want to inflict myself on the people. I want them to seek me and find me. And the angel says, well, where will you put it? Will you put it in the sky or out in outer space? And he said, no, because they'll build planes and they'll find me that way. And I don't want it to be like that. Well, you bury it under the earth? No, they'll find drills to. How about under the water? No, they'll learn how to swim. And, well, where are you going to put it, God? And he said, I'm going to put it right here inside of their heart. It'll be the last place they look. And the big book says that. It says deep down in every single man, woman, and child is a fundamental belief in God deep down. And it's right here, deep down. And that the steps allowed me to get to a place where I found God. And He's in me, He's in you, He's in all of us, right? It's just, my heart has been hardened and inaccessible to receiving what God's been trying to give me, even though He's been working in my life and saved me from,
Who knows
tragedy
what? Yeah.
and dying, I don't know how many times. With all the illegal activities that I participated in, I should be buried under a jail.
A few times, huh?
And I mean, I got some misdemeanors. I don't know how. I just wasn't. A lot of guys come in and they want to brag about their rap sheet, and I'm like, I did all the same thing you did,
Right.
and I didn't get caught. You probably need to find a new profession. You suck at this.
You're a bad. Not only you're a dumb criminal, you're a bad criminal.
You're a bad criminal. Get a job.
So you had that. That was it. Your last relapse then? That
No,
lasted
I would
months?
love to say
Okay,
that.
well then.
So I make it almost 7.5 years. And I meet a woman, and this woman is very sick, and I don't know it all. I'm just glassy-eyed, starry-eyed. I'd admired her, a secret admirer, for years before this, and we had a secret affair. And what I have found is that people with longevity of sobriety that actually have a solution, that actually are connected to God, how they relapse, the beginning of the relapse is in dishonesty. It's this hiding out or not telling the truth or omitting things. And, well, I'm too sober. I've been sober too long to be honest in a meeting or honest with my sponsor. I'm supposed to be better than this, right? I can't show weakness. I've got to be a leader. And it becomes this
Downfall
of us, right?
Yeah.
I'm dishonest, and I cut myself off from the Spirit that saves me. And so I had this secret affair, and she didn't want me telling her. I just wanted to tell the world I'm in love with the woman that I wanted for years. And, I honored her and kept it under wraps. And one thing led to another, and I got loaded again. And it wasn't a devastating relapse, this idea that we drink and use drugs and everything disappears and it all,
Right.
it ends in a fiery airplane crash. It's just ridiculous. I mean, it does for some.
Right.
But I was in my own hell. I'm trying to live a sober life and be a weekend warrior and just grind through the week and make it to Friday so no one knows, because I'm in the recovery business at this point. I'm working.
Oh, okay.
I'm working in a center, and trying to hold it together, be this model of recovery. I'm lying.
Oh, the
I'm living
pressure.
this
Golly.
lie. And the business ends up closing, and I start to get this idea that I need to open up my own rehab, because I've helped Origins Behavioral Health down in South Pottery, who's on the Dr. Phil show all the time. I was boots on the ground. I was the fourth person hired, and helped to create that massive monster that it is today. And Solutions in North Texas before that, in Denton, which is now also a monster, helped them out. And Brazos Recovery Services, they are practicing my 12-step program that I designed, which got repopulated into all kinds of different treatment centers today.
Wow.
And it's not my 12-step, but just how I lay it out.
Yeah.
And I get this idea. I'm done working for other people, and I'm building this business plan. I don't have the resources. I'm now a single dad to my third wife. She burned off to smoke crack, and I'd been raising Stevie, my youngest, since she was a year and a half. And like God gave me what the devil stole back in spades, and I got to have this little girl, but here I am still trying to manage and hold it all together. She'd never see me. I always waited until she was asleep to get loaded. Never saw me that way. And doesn't make it okay.
Right.
But it was justified in my head. And so I had 11 people on the short list to invest in Recovered and Free that could have easily afforded it, written a check for my starter capital, seed money, and not even missed it. And all 11 of them said no. And I was pretty defeated. I thought, well, I guess I'm going to have to look for a job. Now I'm living in a double wide in Laguna Park, Texas, which I never knew there was a Laguna Park. I didn't even buy drugs in a trailer park. And here I'm, well, it's not a trailer park, but it's a trailer and on a half-acre land. And, things are beginning to look bleak. It's looking like I'm going to have to sell my motorcycle just to make it. And my landlord had seen what I had done every Wednesday night. There was a big book study at my house, and the lawn would be filled with cars. You had to decide whether you wanted your arms up or down before you walked in because you weren't moving, and it was pretty amazing. And he'd seen the people that I was trying to help. So when I became unemployed, he didn't charge me rent. He just knew I was good for it. And when my wife left, he lowered the rent because he knew I was, by our how we walked, that we demonstrated the power of God. We were always on time with Ram. We never late. And so he just helped. And a couple of friends who I'd posted my motorcycle up for sale, and a couple of friends saw it on Facebook. And unbeknownst to me, there's a knock on the door one night, and things are looking really bleak. And one of the guys knocks on the door, and he has an envelope full of cash and says, "Here." Well, between him and another guy the next day does the same thing. Between the two of them, they gave me enough money that's what I was asking for the bike for. It was I just had to be willing to submit and surrender. Okay, I'm giving up the love of my life, my motorcycle. And God said, okay, you're finally surrendering and asking for help. And he answered with 2 angels. And that carried me through. And I got a call from a woman who actually from a man whose daughter I'd helped get through the steps, and she had a great experience. And he said, "I heard you were trying to open up a rehab." And I said, yeah, I'm trying. I just can't get the seed money. And he said, well, I told him the number. He says, I have your first third. So he came with a third of the money. And a couple of weeks later, another gal called, and I'd helped her son 5 or 6 years earlier, and he was doing great at the time. And she said, I heard you're trying to open up a rehab. I said, yeah. And she said, and I told her all the details, and she said, I got your other third. And so I'm 2/3 the way there from people I didn't ask. And this one lady had loaned me the money to get a divorce and get full custody of my daughter, Stevie. And I'd totally forgotten that I hadn't paid her back, and it came to my memory, and I went, oh man. So I didn't touch the 2/3, the remaining little bit that I had left from the money that had been dropped off by the angels,
Right.
Was enough for me to pay her back. And so I called her and said, hey, look, I just want to make things right with us. And it was the last of my money. I didn't know what was going to happen next. And she asked me what was going on in my life. And I didn't think, like, there was no motive in this. I literally was just paying her back and telling her what was going on. And
So now, were you still using it that time?
Yeah, well, yes.
Okay, that's
it was, again, it wasn't full off the chain.
Right.
Doesn't justify it, but I
Okay.
was still. No, I hadn't told anybody. I'm living the lie. Right?
Okay,
but
okay.
I'm still trying to do it because I
But-
know that
well,
God
that's-
is moving, even though I'm loaded.
That's what I wanted to point out. It's like, okay, wait a minute, you're still, you're still in the water, if you, as you say, and you're still like doing the right thing. Well, it's like, what's happening? Yeah, that had to be the conflict. Ooh.
And so I give her the last of my money, and she's smiling the whole time. And she said, Don, I just really admire what you're doing, and I've seen you work for years, and I've seen you in the trenches carrying the message and sponsoring. And she said, I've got your last third, and I just wept, like I couldn't believe it. This is becoming a reality. And this woman that I'd fallen in love with and relapsed with, she had allegedly, I've not seen it, but allegedly videotaped me getting loaded one night. And I was in a blackout. I don't really recall the events. And she then sent it to people in the industry that had some animosity towards me. And they, in turn, were kind enough to show it to everybody who would watch it in the industry weeks before I'm opening Recovered and Free. So, I mean, the devil's coming against me hard. And I called Spons, and I'm like, I've been living a lie. I can't do this anymore. I'm trying to start this thing, and there's not, like, it's all falling apart around me, and I'm in motion. I have the lease signed. I've got people on board ready to start working for me, and I go back through the work, and I don't have some big mountaintop experience. I just go through it. My 3rd step prayer wasn't a huge awakening. I just I went through the process of the steps, and we got client 1 after a month. I thought because of the stellar reputation that I had in the industry, that the moment that I open up
It
the
would be,
Facebook
standing
page,
room only.
Once I hit publish, the phone is going to start blowing up. It didn't. The phone didn't ring. Crickets for 2 weeks. For 2 weeks.
Oh man! And meanwhile, I just know you're going, okay. Maybe this is just me. This is not God. I'm not supposed to be doing this. I'm just second guessing, which again is torture.
And I hadn't spent all, not even a fraction of the money that was given to me. I'm like, okay, I can give all that back and just
go get a
and
job.
Then we got a call, and this was a guy who had an 80-year-old crackhead. 80 years old.
Wow.
I didn't know they made those. and he was destitute. He was on disability and didn't have anything. And I thought, well, I mean, we can try our systems, and I had some new employees to the rehab industry.
Training experience.
Yeah, we're not treatment, by the way. Recovered and Free is not treatment. I don't want to.
Oh, thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah, I don't.
We'll talk about that. Yeah.
Yeah. But people. I thought, well, we'll practice at the lack of a better terminology, work out the kinks with somebody who's not got any skin in the game. And we took him in and we started working with him, and then the phone started to ring, and then another one got added, then another one, and then another one, and by the time number 1 had gone through, I think the 2nd step, 3rd step maybe, he announces in community first thing in the morning. He said, I just want to thank Recovered and Free for giving me the keys to the kingdom. And he holds up the big book and he says, I know what I need to do now. I'm out of here.
Oh, wait.
Also on the day, oddly enough, that his disability check came in.
Coinky dink.
Weird coincidence.
Maybe.
And, but thus started Recovered and Free. And it's been a heck of a ride these last 6 years, and we're into our 7th now, and it's been a heck of a ride. I've had these visions of, in 5 years, having 2 or 3 locations across the United States, a women's location. Like, I had all these great plans, and, you know, we're still treading water.
Sure.
Taking on some every once in a while.
Right.
But we're still here and doing it. And in our first year, it was really amazing. The rest of the industry, one of the treatment centers that were a neighbor to us had, during the Christmas holidays, had 2 clients. That was it. And they took every form of insurance, and they had 2 clients and a full huge staff. I mean, this place was on 300 acres. And
my goodness.
It was like the dream
Right.
rehab in Texas. And here we are, this little humble place in Hubbard, Texas, with cracks in the linoleum floor, and, you know, and we had 18 people.
Wow.
We had 18 people, and I mean, we haven't been that full since, but that was just literally the entrance of us in our first year, and it's been amazing to watch what's happened. And we've, you know, made some alterations and changes, and we don't just look at alcoholism and addiction anymore. That's the beginning. That gets our brain cleared, defogged, and we have a spiritual experience around that. The obsession gets removed. We're recovered and free from alcoholism.
Right.
Which doesn't take 90 days, and my program is 90 days. It can happen, obviously, in 2 weeks.
Oh, sure.
But the off-the-shelf, for people who haven't had any success at recovery, you know, my offering is 90 days. But I do offer shorter lengths of stay depending on the success of someone. Like, God forbid, Christine, that you relapse.
It happens in our world.
You know,
yeah.
I relapsed, which, you know, I got 30 years of experience under my belt that if I don't do this and stay connected to God, guaranteed
Right.
I'm going to relapse.
Right.
Like, guaranteed. It's not like, oh, well, he owns a rehab. He knows the big
He's
book
done.
inside and out.
You still got to do the deal.
If I get disconnected, I absolutely will lose everything that I love.
Right.
And
So you've got a 1 to 2 week stay for someone who's
I have a 2-week program called the Jumpstart program, and if it was, you know, you who are practicing, you know, you're out there and you're in the trenches and you're helping women and you're carrying the message, and I mean, you're doing the things.
right.
And I mean, what am I going to really teach you out of the big? I mean, there might be a few things that you pick up, but you know what you need to do.
Right.
And you need a safe place of separation. Get the noise of the outside world out of the way, the family, you know, breathing down your neck, employees, employers, coworkers, neighbors, whatever, kids, right? Get separated. Quiet, safe, protected environment. Go through the work, quick, fast, and in a hurry. Get reconnected and get back into the business of living.
Right.
And that's why, you know, I opened a peer-driven recovery model. Peer-driven. I don't hire any licensed professionals.
Okay.
Intentionally, by design. Everyone that works for me is an alcoholic and an addict who's recovered and been through the program.
Right.
So they know what it's like, and I think that's why we're so insanely successful. Like, if you Google recovered and free, you'll see our reviews, and there's only 2 that, and I wish I could, you know, take a couple of them off, because one was complaining about our phone system when we were starting because it wasn't working. I understand. And the other one was a client who probably was misplaced and needed, you know, a higher level of care than what we could offer. And the rest of them, I mean, just look at them, read them. There's family members that are chiming in about who their son or father or husband
That's
has
amazing.
become. Girlfriends, significant others, all the alumni. And I think that success is, of course, it's God. But the men who work there have been down those same roads, have lost the kids, have been in the same messes that the people that are coming to us. And so it's not book-learned people with big hearts and great intentions.
Sure.
And I'm not saying that the clinical world doesn't work. It does.
Right.
People get sober everywhere, with or without a big book, at an altar call, in a jail cell. Like,
Right.
I mean, everywhere. But oh gosh, I forgot where I was going.
The reviews and stuff like that. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. The success of RAF, of Recovered and Free, is that we connect with the people that we work with, and they know that we know, and the clinical, we're not touching their inner child or doing trauma work or EMDR or any of that, which I have a therapist and have done EMDR on some of the trauma in my past, but I couldn't even do that trauma work to solve my alcoholism and addiction
Until you did
I
this
needed
one
to
first.
get connected
Right.
to God first and give a level playing field to a therapist who
Right.
could look into those deep crevices.
Sure. You needed a foundation to visit that. Well, and I got to tell you, I can testify to that. I'd gone down to Austin Recovery, to get sober, and the counselor was a licensed, but she had no experience with addiction, whatsoever. And it's just like I didn't believe a word she said.
Well, and the thing is, like, we can do AIC, which is a method that most of us use with people that we know they don't know, or management. It's acknowledge, ignore, and continue.
Yeah.
So
and
that's a
fake
great
it.
idea.
Yeah.
And then
Fake it, because you put me in a facility like that, I'll admit to anything you want me to admit, as long as you'll get off my back. Let me go get some more pudding, and I get out of here with a check by my name. I'll tell you anything you want to hear.
Right. And the thing is, whether they believe us or not, their job is to report what was reported.
Right.
So even if they believe that we're lying, they don't check us on lying. They just write it down, put it in the didactic or in their notes, and okay, next client.
Right.
Next client.
Right.
And do their minimum or required meetings per week with their clients, and we're with the guys 24/7, and we've been down the same road, and they know that we know, and we can call them on their crap, and we have no bones about it. Like, our Recovered and Free is not for the meek. It's for people who genuinely want to change their life.
Right.
I mean, because we're kind of tough. Our accountability is very high. If you're messing up, we're going to tell you. If you're lying, we're going to tell you. And we're not going to mince words. We're not going to coddle and pat
This
you
is
on
life
the
or
back.
death, for God's sake.
Right.
Yeah, man. You'll kill someone if you dance around that kind of shit.
Pat them on the back and tell them that it's going to be okay doesn't work. If that was the case, my mom would have loved me into recovery at 17 years old instead of kicking me out of the house.
Right.
She would have loved me. She loved me so much. And if love were enough, all of us had someone in our life that loved us.
Right. That wanted it for us bad enough.
Right. And so that connection is really key. And it's just amazing how God works. I had this plan, like I said, the 5-year plan, and everybody that started with me, I had these envisioned like giving them houses for Christmas, birthday gifts, and and the truth is that the people that I thought I was going to retire with and that were going to retire with me, none of them are with me. Most of them have relapsed because they got separated, and 2 of them are now dead, and one of them was like a little brother to me. I mean, he was so close. We spent so much time together before RAF, never mind during RAF, and he's no longer with us. And just tragic. Like, the thing is, it is life or death, and the highest form of intimacy isn't in the bedroom.
Right.
The highest form of intimacy is honesty.
A soul to soul. Yeah.
Honesty. It is not. It's going to be okay, because the truth is, for a real alcoholic and addict,
It's not.
It's not going to be okay.
Right.
No matter how many years of sobriety you have. And I've discovered that the length of your sobriety does not translate into, it's not directly proportional to your proximity to God.
No, in no way, shape, or form.
In fact, the guys that come through Recovered and Free, we have them not share in open meetings until they're done their 5th step, because now they have something to offer. Up until then, they're just in problem.
Right.
They're all just in the problem. And I've been to meetings with them. I kind of keep a healthy distance from the clients so that I can still be effective.
Sure.
And I'll occasionally go to an outside meeting with the guys, and I'll hear them share, and it is straight fire. I mean, straight fire. And I'll hear people who are trudging, they're making their way through recovery, and they are struggling, and it's, another meeting will save them. And, it's this, there's no hope, there's no fire, there's no passion. And these guys, just in a few weeks of sobriety, have more to offer because of their proximity to God than somebody with 20 or 30 years of sobriety. Now, I'm not trivializing 20 or 30 years. If you make it that long in sobriety, you have been through some stuff and you got some experiences, for sure. But that fire and that passion, that
There's
light
nothing
that
like
comes
it,
on,
yeah.
like I get to watch Lazarus
beautiful.
every single day.
That's
Get
amazing.
risen from the dead, and I hope I'm not offending any of your listeners about Jesus. But the Lazarus story, like, he's dead, he's cold, he's smelling bad, like he's gone.
Family's given
And
up
it's
and in
time.
despair.
Yeah. And according to your faith, so be it unto you. And boom, Lazarus gets returned from the dead. And I watched these dead men
You
walk
think he had a
in.
story?
Yeah. I'll watch.
You think he had a story? And do you think when he told that story, that truth just didn't ooze
Out of him?
That's what it is. But with this peer-to-peer thing, it's like I can tell. It's strange. It's so strange and beautiful and miraculous how that works. Where we're working with another alcoholic addict, it's like, I believe you. When you say something to me, I believe you. And it's just crazy.
Well, that's why working with others is so vitally important for the real alcoholic.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
not taking out the trash. It's not sharing a meeting. Those things are great. But working knee to knee with a guy, I get to relive the horrors of my past, which the book says that I can't remember on my own. On my own, I will forget how
Right.
bad it was. Right? And people said
With something
people
just
said
2 weeks ago, I can
Yeah.
forget how I
Right.
was in a ditch with vomit all over. Yeah, I get it.
And I'm telling
It
you,
wasn't that bad.
I can't tell you how many old timers that I've heard say, if you don't remember your last drink, you haven't had it. And the book says exactly the opposite. In a couple of weeks to a month, I'm going to forget how bad it was.
Right.
And working with another alcoholic, it allows me to bring up. Like, it's still painful to me when I talk about my daughter, my oldest daughter. She's
imagine.
19 now, and our relationship is not anywhere where I'd like it to be. She was collateral damage to my alcoholism and addiction, and I just wish I had the closeness that I do with my second daughter. And I'm married for my final time, I'm going to say.
There you go.
Not fourth. She doesn't like to be referred to as fourth wife.
Yeah, don't do that.
Last wife. She's my last wife.
There you go.
And we've got a blended family that's just beautiful. My youngest, who is 9 now, her boys, which are my boys, 6 and 7, and at 53 years old, they have
Where are you?
intense energy.
Yeah.
But I mean, the love in our home, the woman that I have today, is just amazing. She walks me through. I mean, we're just transparent and honest, and we talk about difficult things, and it doesn't make it easy. But it's so great to have someone. Like, she has her own career, but she helps me, and she's a great muse when I bring. I've had a challenge at Recovered and Free just recently with staffing issues, and that were just devastating to me personally, emotionally, just devastating. And she walked me through it and gave me perspective. And she's not my sponsor, but she knows me.
Right. A voice
Probably
to trust.
probably better than anyone else, And just like that peer that is my wife, equally yoked, right, is effective with me, so our peer-driven model is effective with the men who come in. And it's a beautiful life. Like, I don't deserve to be asked onto a podcast. I didn't know what a podcast was.
Before I did my first show, honey, I didn't either.
I got to tell you, the camera's freaking me out. I thought it was just going to be voice, or I would have shaved. I mean, to be asked to do something like this. I was asked, the only thing I was asked back in the day was I holding, or asked to leave.
Right. Oh.
Right. And not come back. Like, get out. To do this life-giving opportunity to talk to other people who are in difficult situations, or maybe they're recovered and just need a spark, need a breath of fresh air into their sails. And if you're listening, like the statistics are that 1 in 4 Americans know someone suffering from addiction if they're not themselves.
Oh, I'm surprised it's that low. I would think it would be more than that even.
Some form, whether it's a process addiction like gambling or sex or food, or chemical like drugs, alcohol. So everybody knows somebody. If 1 in 4 Americans suffer it, if 25% of, and that's the best guess because alcoholics lie, drug addicts lie, right? So 25%, that means I know somebody who's suffering, and I don't know the resources. I can't tell you how many people call me and they don't even know what questions to ask. I have a family member who's dying. What do I do? And I'll coach, and like I've coached families and work with them well beyond what I think any other place would. I'm very involved as an owner. I try to pick up all the guys from wherever they are and bring them into the center so I can get to know them personally and hear some of their story and share some of mine and start that connection right away.
Absolutely.
And I do big book lectures and hear fifth steps, and some of the guys, when they graduate on, we also have a sober living component so they can just transition right out of the program into sober living. Some of the guys ask me to sponsor them and work with them. What an honor. And I get to do that in a licensed facility. You can't talk to a previous client for 2 years.
That's nuts.
No
That's
contact.
ridiculous.
No contact.
That's nuts.
And we don't do that. And the little town of Hubbard doesn't have much to offer, but it's got a really big heart. And when I opened up, they had a real difficult time with me opening up a women's center because it backs up to a daycare or a men's center.
Oh, right.
And I said, as I'm supposed to do this 5-minute little deal to town council as an introduction. Just to introduce what I'm doing, I'm all dressed up.
This is what I'm going to do for your
This
neighborhood.
is what we're going to do. And they came against me so hard. I mean, it was an interrogation. I mean, they might as well have the lamp out.
And I understand that. Okay, I mean, if you're devil's advocate, when you step back and you go, okay, I'm taking, especially people that are ignorant, and that's not offensive, but people, when you're ignorant, you just don't know.
Right.
People that are ignorant to addiction, and they're taking their 3-year-old little girl to this daycare and going to work. I would be, I could understand that.
Well, this important detail I've accidentally left out, and that is the same place that I worked at, which was a women's facility that ended up closing, is the building that we're now in. So it was already a rehab months earlier as
Except
a
it
women's
was
facility.
women.
And when it shut down, I said to the owner, I don't know how I'm going to do this. And it was months in between shutting down and by the time we opened, I said, I don't know how I'm going to do this, but I'm going to do this. Before I had one investor, and he hung on, and he was kind enough to hang on to the property and not sell it, and it happened. And I've got the lease signed and everything on board, and I go to do this introduction with the town council, and it is a witch
Brick
hunt.
wall.
I mean, 45-minute, grueling, and all I can think of is, do you know that this is called discrimination when the evidence is that you have had women in addiction and alcoholism in the same facility, backing up to the same daycare, and now it's a man doing it. And I don't want to say the word, but it's my blood is boiling. At this
I can
point.
only imagine. Golly.
And my sweet little daughter, who at this point is now 3, the same age that my other daughter was taken from me, had walked in. She wanted to wear a princess dress, so she's wearing a princess costume dress into the town council meeting, and she's sitting there in the back, one of the rows. I don't recall which one. And I said, you don't understand, like, I wouldn't subject your families or children to anything I'm not subjecting my family or children to. Like, my daughter and I are going to live on campus with these men.
Right.
And we've got a separate hallway that's closed off and significant space. Not really the best place to raise a little girl, but
safe.
Safe. And we had tons of cameras inside and all kinds of rules about it. But they said, oh, Well, you should have said that in the beginning. Yeah, welcome.
Oh my
It was my little
goodness.
girl who saved Recovered and Free and put us on the map.
Funny.
And it's just amazing, just amazing. And so, but there still was resistance even after we got passed
The
by the town
community,
council.
yeah.
The community had started a petition to shut us down.
Oh.
And I mean, there were, I don't know how many names, but it was getting passed through the churches. And I mean, it was getting some traction, I guess, and they didn't adhere to it because I met
That just
all
had
the,
to make you feel awful.
Oh,
I mean,
well,
just
I had two choices at that point,
you know?
right? Do I just seclude and I won't even buy anything from the town of Hubbard? We'll get our gas outside of Hubbard. We'll buy our groceries outside of Hubbard. Everything that the guys do will be outside of Hubbard. You'll never see us. We'll just stay away from you. Or I can show them who we really are. I can break the stigma.
right.
And so I met a man who's really active in Hubbard, Eugene Fulton, and he was one of the only guys doing service work in the community as a volunteer, doing little cleanup projects, and he was pretty much single-handed. I guess he
Right.
had a couple of guys who'd come help out every once in a while. And I said, Eugene, you need a hand? He said, yeah. And so I built into my program 2 days a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays. There's 2 hours that we allot to. It's called serve our community, and we don't take any donations. We don't take any exchange of services for it.
Right.
And we do cleanup projects. We clean. We maintain the Pin Oak Cemetery so that people have a nice, clean place to come
visit, yeah.
honor their loved ones. And we beautified their little town. They've got 4 man-made lakes and a little park there, and no one was coming to visit, and no one was coming to stay. And we cleaned all the pads and made it, accessible. And now it's up and running, and we paint the town pool. And since then, it's totally continued to evolve. And the town has started to see who we really are, that we're just sons, that we're just brothers, that we're just fathers.
Right.
Right? We're good men who have a bad illness. And now the elementary school.
I was gonna say,
Yeah,
I saw
comes-
pictures on your Facebook page not long ago. All your guys were in an elementary school helping teachers put their classrooms together.
Yes, ma'am. And we worked the concession stand for Friday Night Lights. And I mean, we're so highly
That's
involved.
beautiful.
The drugstore, the pharmacy in Hubbard, there's only one, is selling our T-shirts for to help proceeds, and people are buying them, that support us. And if you're wearing a Recovered and Free shirt in the town of Hubbard, you're almost treated like royalty. The businesses there know that our men work. They show up when they say
help,
they're going to do.
right.
And they do it. They have integrity, and they're not late for their shift, and they volunteer when who wants to work over. Now,
Right.
there's not a lot of job opportunities there in Hubbard, but the ones that are, hire our guys.
Right.
Knowing that it's temporary, knowing that they're not going to be there forever. There's a couple of guys that Dwayne, my right-hand man, he's going to die Recovered and Free. He is my right-hand man, most trusted individual in my organization. And he came in, he was so broken and busted up. He urinating on himself in the bed. I mean, just totally broken. And he's my right-hand man today. He's been, he's had such a divine wake-up call from God and
Right.
movement in his life. He does he's like the church guy. Like, he never intended that. He was never a church member.
Really?
And all the churches in the area are getting him to do his testimony, and it's really amazing.
That is
He said,
beautiful.
and when he graduated, he said, well, where do I carry the message? I said, why don't you go talk to the local church here and see if you can't volunteer and help out there. And then it turned into him serving the Jesus table when it was open, the homeless shelter, or the homeless meal that the church put on, Methodist church put on. Rainey, I can't remember his first name, was the head of that, and he just got involved, and now he's telling his testimony all over Texas. It's really, really amazing.
That is amazing.
And just to watch these men, like Dwayne had 8 grandchildren. He now knows all their names, and they want to see him.
Wow.
His daughter, one of his daughters came and told her story to one of our family days. We have a family day for the guys where we educate the parents or the family members for an hour. We all break bread together, and that's amazing. The two churches that are in town, the two big churches, Baptists and Methodists, fight. The women fight over who's going to donate the best home cooked meals.
Oh,
and,
wow, for
it's
the family day.
Amazing. It's amazing. Oh yeah, and they drop off cookies, and just the change that we're just gone from, not in my backyard,
Right.
to embraced and loved and supported by so many members of the community.
That's amazing.
And the woman who started the petition, she came to me 9 months, maybe a year ago. Said, "Can we talk in private?" And I said, "Yeah, absolutely." She said, "I want to make amends.
Wow.
I was wrong." I couldn't believe it. I've never had someone who's not an alcoholic or an addict.
Right? Who does that?
Who does that? And she made amends. She said, God's all over this place and what you guys are doing. And when I have visitors come into the center, again, it's not much. It was an old retirement home or old age home built in the late 70s, early 80s. I mean, it's not much to look at. And people come onto the property and just, they can feel the Spirit. They
Right.
can feel God there. And, to go from that one extreme to the other is just, I reflect on it and I just can't. Our second last family day, there was 40 people that had come. I mean, I get teary-eyed just looking at all the faces and look at all the kids and parents and wives and significant others.
Well, and recognizing the healing that, in addiction, what you're doing, you're not just helping the individual heal.
Right.
It spider webs, just the same way our addiction did, right?
Absolutely.
It infected our families, and it infected our children and our spouses and our loved ones, but recovery can do the same thing, and break those generational curses that have run in families for so long. That cycle can be stopped.
And instead of leaving a wake of destruction, it's a wake of life
And hope
and happiness. And it's not a straight line. There's a lot of trials.
Well, getting there wasn't a straight line, honey.
No.
Yeah.
And we offer CODA work for the families. Not a lot of them embrace it because
Explain what CODA is.
Codependence Anonymous.
Okay.
We offer some of the work there. And we do it with the men. That's what I was saying earlier, is that once we get the man through the 12 steps in his 90 days, we begin to work on codependency. And I didn't realize it, but codependency is why I relapsed.
Makes sense.
It's because I had a connection with God. It wasn't my lack of God. It was my overdependence on people, and that my sense of self-esteem and self-worth, my value on this earth, depended on whether you liked me or not.
Right.
Whether you were happy or not. And what do I got to do to make you happy? Well, if this will make you happy, I'll do that. And even though I do it resentfully because it's something I didn't want to do, I would do it anyway, because why am I always doing the dishes? Why am I always doing the laundry? Why am I always doing the domestic stuff?
Right.
Well,
And those
because
resentments,
I want to keep her happy. And my sponsor, my CODA sponsor, who I have a CODA sponsor and an AA sponsor, she said, "Don, you don't have the ability to make someone happy. You will never make her happy."
And you'll literally kill yourself trying.
Oh, and it shocked the heck out of me. I'm like, what do you mean? Nobody can make you happy or not happy. You decide. You get to decide how you look at something. And so she's been doing a lot of work with. I'm a slow study, but
Most of us are in these programs.
she's a great inspiration for me, and she does a lot of great work. And we do the work as far as we can go with the men that have completed the 12 steps. They're currently helping, and that's the other thing, is that we're teaching these men how to be sponsors. So when they get out, they're ready to take somebody on.
Go spread the wealth.
Yeah.
Share what you've learned, because I do believe that you can't keep it if you don't share it. I do believe that
Absolutely.
in our program, that you can't live a selfish clod of a life and or I guess you could, but in my humble opinion, it's miserable, because that's where the go-go juice is. When you're investing in other people, what you get back, it's not cliche, it's true. That's man. There's nothing like it.
And that's one of my favorite parts of the big book. It's on page 159. It says that these men had found something brand new in life. And although they knew they must help others in order to stay sober, that motive became secondary. It was transcended by the joy they felt in giving themselves freely for others. And so I want these men to experience that. Like,
Right.
here's the juice. Here's the real thing. Being a servant, having a servant heart, being a part of a community, doing that service out in the community. Like, you belong. And not only do you belong, you bring light to dark
Not only do you
corners.
belong, you're wanted.
Yes. And it's just, we do that coda work, and guys get to look at recovery from a different angle. And it really is. I arrogantly thought, even if I am codependent, I have the original 12 steps from the original writers of the big book. And I'm telling you, Melinda uses the same big book, but she puts the person spin on it.
Right.
The people problem, she
Sure.
calls it, on it. And I just am amazed. I've been codependent since I can remember.
Right.
And alcoholics and addicts have to be. Like, 100% of addicts and alcoholics are codependent. They
Right.
won't accept it. They won't. Many of them might say, I pick, my picker's broken.
Yeah, same thing. You're just saying it different.
It's not your picker. It's you that's
Right.
broken.
The results are the same.
And if we can just fix you, stop looking for Mrs. Right, because she doesn't exist.
Right. Exactly.
She doesn't exist. And you can start trying to be Mr. Right.
Right.
Then when both of you are ready, God will bring you together. But if you don't, and you jump the gun, and you're not ready, and you don't fix what the real problem is, then you're going to find yourself in the same mess over and
And
over.
carrying the same problems that you've had in all the other relationships into this one.
God is so great. He allows us to do an open book test, and the answers are in the book. Open book test. And if we fail, He allows us to take it as many times as we want. Yeah, so I could burn through all kinds of relationships over and over and over and over again.
40 more days.
Right. And if I can just get the right one, and then at some point I start to fix me and get connected with God in this area of my life, and then all of a sudden my relationships get better.
Strangely,
And
huh?
the depth and I don't have a lot of close friends. The ones that I do are very close. And the relationships that I've had in the past, romantic relationships that I've had in the past, have been very much come here, go away, come here, go away. You're too close. Oh, not that intimate. You need to be back here. Oh, don't leave. Don't leave.
Where are you going?
Yeah.
That's like, ooh,
And now Danielle and I have been through, so much peaks and valleys, and we're together on this walk, and she's helped me in areas that I've never received help from through a woman, and it's healthy stuff. It's not dependence. She shines light on things and helps raise my awareness and supports me through difficult times. And there's times where I have to spend 2 or 3 days overnight at the center, and it's a burden for her because we got 3 kids.
She's got the 3 kids, the small ones, yeah.
And it's a lot. It's a heavy load. She went away for 3 days to a women's executive retreat, and I had the kids for 3 days during the school week. And I thought,
during school week.
Making lunches and all that.
Yeah.
No problem. And I'm telling you what, when Danielle came back, I slept for 3 days.
And you're never allowed to leave again.
I was like, how do you do this? And there are periods, I've got a co-occurring disorder, which, I have opinions about people who get diagnosed early in recovery, because the insurance companies pay more for people with dual diagnosis.
Right.
So when you go to rehab, or treatment, licensed treatment facilities, and you're putting up the one thing that you've breathed water, breathed underwater with, you're going to have anxiety, you're going to have depression.
Sure.
You're not bipolar. You don't have acute anxiety or depressive disorders.
But if they can add a
just
label.
But if I can do that, then I get more money. And so addicts and alcoholics are going into rehab, and they're coming out with a gallon bag of new prescriptions and a new diagnosis. And the addict and the alcoholic loves to hear that. I want to hear that it's
a new crutch.
I want to hear that it's this and not alcohol.
And not me.
Right.
Right.
And the family is like, oh, little Johnny
Suddenly
isn't
we have the
an alcoholic or
answer.
an addict.
Yeah.
It's because he's bipolar. He's chronically depressed. And I'm not saying that we don't have those, but there was a man who was a doctor, opened up a rehab out in Kentucky for other doctors because they're special. They can't just go to the regular facility. And he posed a question to the audience, who were all doctors. And he said, 8% of Americans have acute anxiety and depressive disorders. And he said, what percentage of addicts and alcoholics do you think have acute anxiety and depressive disorders? And from the crowd, you could hear in the background, 30%, 50%, 100%. And he said, 8% were average Americans.
Oh, wow.
Right? We're just people. This idea that people who don't have addiction or alcoholism, I appreciate the earth people thing, but when people say they're normies, it puts us in like this subclass of human.
Right.
And it's almost self-deprecating. Unconsciously, I do this, right? And so, but people with diabetes don't walk around going, hi, my name's Don and I'm a diabetic.
Right.
And I'm less than you because my body doesn't produce insulin.
I'm not normal. Yeah.
We're average Americans. We just have this disease, this illness that separates us from God. The alcohol and drugs do for sure. And it makes me different. I'm normal in every other area. I work just as hard. I play just as hard. I love just as hard. I hurt just as hard. It's not like my pain is any worse than the neighbor's pain who's not an alcoholic or an addict. We're just normal people who have this illness. It's not socially acceptable. It's, there's a lot of misconceptions about who we are, right? But we're just part of God's kids. We're not the redheaded stepchild.
Right.
He didn't have any grandkids, right? We're all his kids. And I've been blessed with addiction and alcoholism because it's what brought me to my knees. And that's where I found God. It's at the end of that rope that he told me to go call Cliff. And I didn't have a straight line, and I did relapse. And relapse doesn't mean it's the worst thing in the world.
Right.
Like there's tons of people who have a miracle happen, stage 4 cancer, and it's just suddenly gone. He was prayed over, she was prayed over, it's gone, miracle.
Right.
And then they relapse. No one gives up hope. They start praying again. And with addicts and alcoholics, relapse is the most devastating thing. It doesn't have to be.
No.
Now, I'm not promoting relapse. People
It's what
die.
you do afterwards.
People die,
Yeah.
they do. But it doesn't have to end that way, right? If a man knows or a woman knows that there is a solution available and they elect not to take this solution, we can't get rid of the problem. I can't remove my alcoholism and addiction.
Right.
But I do have a choice to embrace the solution or not, right? And so, that's why I coach families on. Once he's been through this program, if he relapses, he does have a choice. He doesn't choose to drink or to use. He's lost that.
Right.
But he can choose to do the 12 steps and get
To go
connected
back
to
to
God.
doing what he knew worked in the first place that got him into recovery. So how can people, if there's someone that's listening that is in need of help, how can people reach you or reach the facility, or how's all the things?
There's a couple of avenues. On our website, on Google, on Facebook.
So they could just Google Recovered and Free. Hubbard,
And-
Texas.
And you'll find us. And the phone number that's on there is my personal cell phone number. I answer it 24/7 if I'm conscious. And so you can call. I do all the admissions because I want to know that a man who's coming to us really wants to change.
Right.
Isn't doing consequence aversion, isn't just trying to appease the family,
Sure.
isn't trying to get the law off of his back and get a lower sentence. I mean, some of those things may be true, but I want a guy who really is willing to chew through concrete
Right.
to get well, because as I said, we're not an easy place to, you'll get voted off the island
Real
if
soon.
you're playing
Right.
games.
Right.
And so there's that avenue. Just reach out to me at 817-240-4124. And I've been told you shouldn't do that on the internet. You'll be trolled. And 817-240-4124.
Who needs to hear it's going to hear. And you got a Facebook page.
Facebook page,
You got a
Recovered and
website.
Free. Yep. recoveredandfree.com. And maybe not so eloquently, you can also go to recoveredaf.com.
And free. Get your mind out of the gutter.
And free.
And free. That's right.
And there's also another organization that I'm on the board with is called Access to Freedom. And Access to Freedom reaches and supports and helps people who are the underserved community of men. And those are men who don't have anything. They're destitute. They
Right.
have burned every bridge. There's no more support. There's no finances. And unfortunately, I cannot operate Recovered and Free. I got to keep the lights on. I got to
Sure you
keep
do.
payroll
Yeah.
going and feed the men that are at the center,
Right.
and electricity and all those wonderful things. The utility company doesn't care how big
Right.
my heart is. But Access to Freedom allows men to get access to a place like Recovered and Free. And they take donations. They have a website also, and it's Access to Freedom, TX, as in Texas, .org.
.org. Okay.
And we take donations that way. Or you can call that number, and I can give you more information about that as well. But Access to Freedom was a new project because I have scholarshiped in the last 6.5 years, close to $1 million, which is kind of my putting back into the universe what I stole.
Sure.
It's my way to make amends to God and his kids. However, I can't sustain that,
Right.
obviously. And so Access to Freedom helps alleviate that
That's
by
great.
giving men who don't have a shot. Their only shot is either TDCJ, criminal justice.
Right. Or the streets.
Or the streets, or a homeless shelter, or state-funded options, which people get sober there too, but they also get connections there, and
Right.
people are using there, and it's a lot tougher. And I wouldn't, if I could afford it, I would send my daughter and sons anywhere but state-funded options.
Right.
Unless, of course, they're given the solution, they choose not to use it,
Right.
and
Sure.
I'm not going to enable them. But we're super affordable compared to traditional treatment options because we don't have to operate within their parameters. If you've had a loved one in rehab and they remove their consent, rescind their consent, the treatment center cannot call your loved ones. We don't operate under that. If he could say, "Don't call my family," I'm going to call their family.
Right.
And we operate completely with integrity and honesty. So if Junior is not doing well, or husband is not doing well, we say in our weekly updates, he's not doing well. He's bucking at this and he's resisting that.
Right. That accountability.
We're just honest. So Access to Freedom, back on track. Access to Freedom helps people get to a place like ours instead of those state-funded options or the streets.
That's great.
And the affordability. I mean, treatment today, traditional treatment options, clinical treatment options, run at approximately in Texas about $20,000 a month. So a 90-day program, if you don't have insurance, you're looking at $60,000, and north of that number also, depending on what amenities.
Right.
And that's what I tell people, like when they're shopping, when they're kicking tires, I'm like, when you go to their websites, look at what they're selling. Is it the pool? Is it equine therapy? You get to pet a horse?
Right.
Kayak therapy? You get to play in the water? Or they have a pool. Is that in the front page? right? We don't have any of that.
Right.
We're not a $60,000 amenity. You're not going to swim with dolphins. You're not going to get a back rub. We're about
No spa
getting
days.
men. Yeah, we're getting men connected to God. It's not a vacation.
Right. Saving lives.
Occasionally, you'll see the men at the pool that we paint.
Right. With the community.
The community. Yeah. But it's certainly not ours, and it's not. We don't go every day. It's maybe
That's
twice
a
a month.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But because it's peer driven, I've whittled the price down as low as I can for people to get in, and it's still out of reach for someone. I get that, but instead of 60,000 for 90 days, we're 15. You know, and it's as low as I could get it and keep people
and
paid.
still keep the lights
keep
on.
food on the table.
But so all someone has to do is just kind of reach out to you, and you can kind of guide them. And your facility might not be right for everybody.
Right,
but,
right.
And you'll be the first one to go.
Yeah.
But the great thing about
turn a
you
lot
is
of people away.
Yeah. Well, but you have enough experience and connection with recovery in the state of Texas, quite frankly, that you could probably refer them or
absolutely.
at least go, you might
Absolutely.
consider this, or, yeah,
Absolutely.
and at least guide them. Yeah. Well, I'm so grateful for you coming here today. I really, really am.
Thank you.
And like I said, I mean it when I say mad respect for you, and what you're doing. And I check out Recovered and Free. Check out what they're doing. You accept donations.
At Access to Freedom. TX.org.
Okay,
Yeah.
good deal. Okay, but if you want more information, seek out Don and learn about what he's doing over in Hubbard, Texas, because it matters. It really, really matters.
And
I'm so grateful.
I'm so glad to help. Listeners, I'm so glad to help, even if you don't come here. Like, if you want coaching, if you want answers, or maybe questions to ask the potential rehab that you want to go to, I will help. You don't have to come to my center to get help.
Right.
You don't have to be an addict or an alcoholic.
Well, again,
you
that
might
just
need support. Just call.
goes on to show your character.
I want to help, even if it's being this tiny little cog that connects somebody else to some other organization. And if I could play just the most insignificant role in somebody's life, just put one little brick into the entire house that is their
Right.
spiritual experience or their recovery.
Worth it.
I'm ready.
Worth it.
Call me. I'm ready.
You got it. Thank you, Don.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate
Thanks for having me so much.
You're welcome. Thank you for listening to Purpose Driven Sobriety. I'm Christine, and I'm an alcoholic. Thanks for listening to Purpose Driven Sobriety. Keep coming back.
I married a guy I knew most of my life. We knew each other in high school and even went to prom together. But little did I know, I did not know him at all. I will call my now ex-husband Dirty Chad.
Hey y'all, this is April
And this is Caroline.
with Bloody Happy Hour.
And we are bringing to you Dirty Chad. Get it on patreon.com/bloodyhappyhour exclusively for all the details and all the red flags.
Caroline's finally telling her story.
My truth.